The science is clear. We only have a brief window left before us to raise our ambitions and to meet the task that's rapidly narrowing.
Welcome to The Breakdown. This week we have Zack Colman back. Let's start with a little bit of a history lesson of this crucial climate conference and a little bit of history of American presidents at this conference in recent decades.
COP stands for the Conference of Parties, and parties are those that have signed on to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. This has actually been going on for almost 3 decades now. There's a lot of discussions over how we're going to handle financial payments to developing nations that are dealing with climate change. There's a lot of discussions over who is responsible for the emissions that we put into the world and how we're going to reduce them. A lot of the times, not a lot gets done. There was some decades in the wilderness until President Obama came along and helped forge the Paris Climate Agreement and set us on a path of everybody accepting some responsibility for what we've done to the planet.
In order to fulfill my solemn duty to protect America and its citizens, the United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord.
That gets us to the Trump era. What's the history of the last administration and this conference?
When Donald Trump was in the White House, you saw a stalling of momentum at a time in which it was very clear we needed to be increasing our ambition because there's just not a lot of carbon budget left. That's what it's called, the amount of emissions that we can put into the atmosphere before we have baked in irreversible catastrophic effects of climate change. With President Biden coming into the White House, is he wanted to reestablish U.S. global leadership on climate change. He said on the campaign trail that he was going to set up a climate leaders summit within his first 100 days in office. He did that in April, and he ended up getting some new commitments out of leaders across the world to reduce their emissions.
Together, these commitments mean that half of the world's economy is now committed to limit warming to 1.5 degrees. And the commitments we've made must become real.
What has the administration done to prepare for COP26? And what are the expectations from other countries in terms of what Joe Biden is going to bring to Scotland?
He said that the U.S. would cut their climate emissions 50 to 52% by 2030. What we don't see right now are details as to exactly how the U.S. is going to do that. The world has already warmed 1.1 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. And if we get to 1.5 degrees Celsius, there's a lot of science that suggests that we're going to be dealing with catastrophic effects of climate change, that the planet will become unlivable in many ways for many people across the world. The goal of this COP is to ensure that countries walk away with new commitments to make sure that we can keep that 1.5 degrees in reach. What President Biden has been doing is sending that signal that the U.S. is taking that science seriously.
What about other major countries?
China, at this point, has not made any new significant commitments to amplify their climate goals. They last year said they were going to try to reach carbon neutrality by 2060. John Kerry has publicly and privately press them to try to speed up some of their nearer term commitments as well. India is a huge part of this emissions pie. They are the 3rd largest emitter in the world. John Kerry and his team have been focused a lot on bringing them to the table, trying to meet Prime Minister Narendra Modi where he's at. Modi has said he wants to build out 450 gigawatts of renewable energy by the end of this decade. He's currently at 100. So there's a big gap there.
How much time do negotiators have left? In other words, how crucial is this year's conference?
This is urgent. One of the things that developing and especially island nations are going to want to see in a rich world to underscore how urgent this is capitalizing on promises to devote $100 billion of climate finance to developing and vulnerable nations every year. They're going to need to see the money.
What are you looking for in terms of how to judge whether this conference is a success or not?
What I'm looking for is have all the major emitters made pledges to increase their ambition to any degree? And then two, what happens when these countries go home and they actually start to work on their legislatures, the US included? What more will be done to actually put the policies behind these goals, which a lot of these political leaders aren't going to be around in 2050?